Mr. Scorsese, an Apple TV Plus original documentary directed by award-winning director Rebecca Miller, has released a clip online hinting at a October 27th premiere on that digital platform. And you won't believe the behind-the-scenes drama behind one of the most critically acclaimed movies of all time, Taxi Driver. And also, the Oscar race has already begun with countries like the Czech Republic and Saudi Arabia opening nominations for the Oscar award slated for March of 2026. And last but not the least, we'll be delving into a story where an American movie mogul established a Hollywood studio and industry in South Africa. I'll be delving into all these stories and more right here on the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Film Mandate, where I bring to you movie news, reviews, and reactions both from the African front and the international scene. So, thank you for joining me for another exciting episode. So if you are indeed a cinephile that have been, following movies for quite a long time, and particularly you like the gangster films or crime film genre of films, then I'm sure you've heard of the name Martin Scorsese, the Academy Award winner, film director, writer, actor, producer, a film historian. He wears many hats. And finally, a clip concerning, about him, a documentary made about him titled Mr. Scorsese, produced by Apple TV Plus and directed by Rebecca Miller, has released a clip online with regards to the five-part documentary, which is set to be premiering on October 27th. However, Variety has captured a little bit of the behind the scenes or the whole story concerning this documentary, and I'd like us to take a read at it briefly. So, in the Variety article published just yesterday, it says that Mr. Scorsese documentary series sets October premiere date as Apple TV Plus unveils first clip. And there you have the maestro himself, Martin Scorsese, in a pose for a picture. So it reads that Apple TV Plus will premiere its Martin Scorsese documentary series, Mr. Scorsese, on October 17th. The five-part documentary event about the legendary filmmaker comes from acclaimed director Rebecca Miller. She came to me, personal velocity fame. The Mr. Scorsese team was given exclusive, unrestricted access to Scorsese's private archives and conducted extensive interviews with the filmmaker. It is anchored by conversations with Scorsese, his friends, family, and creative collaborators, including Robert De Niro, Daniel Day-Lewis, Leonardo DiCaprio, Mick Jagger, Robbie Robertson, Thelma Schoonmaker, Steven Spielberg, Sharon Stone, Jodie Foster, Paul Schrader, Margot Robbie, Kate Blanchett, Jay Cox, and Rodrigo Prieto, I hope I got the name right, along with his children, wife Helen Morris, and close childhood friends. Mr. Scorsese examines how Scorsese's colorful life experiences informed his artistic vision, starting with his earliest experiences with New York University student films to the present day. The documentary explores the themes that have fascinated Scorsese, including the place of good and evil in the fundamental nature of humankind. This project is a filmmaker's dream to have had such access to legends of the industry, from Marty himself to his prolific collaborators, close friends, and family members. Miller said, I was honored he trusted me to create this documentary, which I believe will resonate with everyone from dedicated Scorsese fans to anyone who has grappled with failure and reached for stars. I'm excited to share a sneak peek of Mr. Scorsese, which includes the true version of a mythic and never before told story about Taxi Driver, and how, thanks to Marty's perseverance and dedication to his art, the film retained its integrity and went on to become one of the most culturally significant films of all time. So, so Mr. Yeah, so that's basically so. Mr. Scorsese originated with executive producers Miller and Damon Cardasis at One House Films, and then Cindy Tolan, Miller's longtime creative collaborator. Emmy Award nominated trio Cardasis, Tolan, and Miller serve as executive producers alongside Region, Christopher Donnelly, and Julie Yon. Ron Beckel produces. Robert Fernandez and Patrick Wamsley executive produce. The series is presented by Expanded Media and Round Films in association with LBI Entertainment and Moxie Pictures. In a new first look clip, Scorsese and his filmmaker friends, including Steven Spielberg, reflect on how the director's cut of Taxi Driver almost never saw the light of day, and the extreme lengths the filmmaker was willing to go to protect what would go on to be one of his most iconic films. And that is the clip below. And before we watch the clip, I just want to, it's amazing how there's a lot of the films that we so much enjoy and we hail as classics, and we are so excited about. We forget the tussle and the fights that goes on behind the scenes before it is actually put on whatever platform it may be, whether on a streaming service or previously before the streaming era, mainly exclusive to in cinemas or direct to video, or video on demand, whichever platform it may be. But a lot of the films that we so enjoy and are classics today, most of them would never have seen the day of light if the creators behind it didn't fight for that to be as it is. And for this particular Taxi Driver that we so much love and enjoy, because it's sort of helped redefine even crime dramas. You know, it it it's amazing how Scorsese, who has this calm demeanor and very calm and seem very conserved, went all out to fight for what he believed in and what he created, in the Taxi Driver. And I could understand, because as creative, especially when you pour your heart out into a particular piece of idea, and perhaps you've nested over it for a long time, you've mulled over how you want to produce it, with every inch of the frame, how you're going to frame every character, every piece of prop whatsoever. And then, because perhaps you don't have total creative autonomy or control due to the fact that another party is funding the project, you then get disheartened when the parties involved wants you to act certain aspects of the films. And I'm sure Scorsese didn't like that at all. I mean, if you watch the clip, he was furious. He was furious. And over in history, we've seen these things happen. Yes, sometimes actually to the betterment of the production itself. When perhaps you have an executive who is level-headed and understands cinema even much better and will be able to chip in a note or two to help, make it better. But it is quite tough, because for most creatives, they pour in their all, and in pouring in their all, they are able to be able to, they've honed their skill to the point that perhaps at the time of developing those stories, they know every nook and cranny of the story so much, and they've fallen so much in love with it, and it is very tough for them to even cut a piece out, particularly when it gets to the editing phase and the post-production phase, and they have to piece all these things together. It's already tough when all that you've shot and assembled is perhaps more than the duration you expect to edit it in. And after having been able to shrink maybe a 5 hour, 6 hour footage to, let's say, 2 hours or 1 hour, 30 minutes, and yet a studio executive is still calling for certain pieces to be taken out. So I can actually understand, I mean, not in the level as he, I mean, who can understand? He's a legend, but for my small level of film education and filming, is very tough, particularly when you know that you have this piece organized and you think this is perfect, and then another individual who perhaps holds higher rank than you do would want you to cut it down further. And I think this documentary will give us much more insight as to what creatives go through when they are producing the films that we have so much come to love. And I think sometimes we sit back and we think that, oh, I mean, for someone like Scorsese, who, I mean, he has total creative autonomy. And you will be surprised that when you hear some of the behind the scenes stuff from, I mean, not necessarily Scorsese alone, but from a lot of people, some of the hurdles they have to go through. With time, they are able to build their brand to a level where, I mean, and hone their craft so well that they become an authority figure in their own right. And therefore, the studios would leave them be without having a say in it. You know, you have folks like Christopher Nolan who wouldn't even offer you his script regardless of whether you are the studio head or not. If you want to read a script, you come to his house and you read it and you leave it there. And that is how some creatives have become authority figures because, you know, time after time, their films are critically acclaimed and also commercially successful. So for those who are able to have these two in every production they do without a flop, they become a voice and authority figure of their own, having total creative control. And there are just a few. You know, James Cameron is one of them. You have Steven Spielberg as one of them. Quentin Tarantino won't even listen to you if you dare want to ask any portion of his script or his idea. You know, so you have a number of filmmakers who have become authority figure, you know, of their own. And I mean, I think in recent times you have, I'm sure they have their own small battles, which perhaps we do not know yet, but at least from what we can see from behind, you have people like Denis Villeneuve also coming into that space, and I'm sure Ran Coogler is almost in that space as well. And I mean, it doesn't mean not listening to a creative, an executive is bad in itself, particularly if the executive understands the process very well and has deep insight into storytelling. Perhaps their views would be good to adhere to because there's been times when film creatives have not listened to notes and it has led to disasters. Maybe it could be possibly be that the films were ahead of their time and as a result of that it wasn't received well, or it's possible that the premise was totally not good enough to reel in people into the cinemas. You have one example, I mean, sorry to say, but you have one example like M. Night Shyamalan with the Lady in the Water story, which flopped badly because I think he refused to listen to what the executives were saying, and he inserted himself as an actor as well into the story. So it didn't really augur well, even though at the time he had the name and he was making it, but unfortunately because he stood his ground, it didn't work out well. And there are also times when, in this case, you have Martin Scorsese um, taking a stand and it actually goes well for the film that he has made. So it is quite dicey when it comes to some of these things, but it's only posterity that will prove us right or wrong when finally we get to know what has become of it. I don't know whether showing this would cause me to, you know, to would lead me to flag this. But what I'll do is this: I'll do another video reaction of this particular, and so that I can share it extensively. But since I'm doing the live stream, I'm sure it could result in copyright flagging if perhaps there are some on it. So I would have to hold back and then review it and put it out there. So you can check out that video as well when I put it up. But for now, I'll leave the link to the article and the video in the description below, and let me know your thoughts. But basically, what it said was that the little except the about 2 minutes, I think 1.5 minutes, he spoke about how Scorsese was asked to take out a particular scene that was very gory and involved um, Robert De Niro's character, I think shooting someone's hands off or killing some people, and then as a result of that, the scene was very gory with blood splatter all over the place. And Scorsese was asked to axe it, and even and unfortunately for Scorsese, the reels were in the possession of the studio, and he had to call Spielberg to tell him about it. And he had a plan, and the plan was that he either goes to steal the films himself and destroy it, or I mean, he was caught in that. I mean, he went to an extent where he was considering either shooting someone, and that's to the extent he was that furious. And for just as I said in the beginning, to have a man as calm and well composed like Martin Scorsese to now thinking about resorting to violence, that it meant that he was really not joking about not letting this scene go. But the saving grace was when he was able to color grade it to tone down the red so much so that it looks like almost brown. And if you watch the clip, Steven Spielberg explains that that was what saved that particular scene. So they graded it down to almost a brownish color. The red becoming almost a brownish color, and also added grains to it, and that was what convinced the executives to accept to keep to allow him to keep the scene in, and that became history. So it is quite interesting how you know your creative juices would kick in when you are faced with such challenges as this. And I'm sure, just as Rebecca Miller, the award winner for director for this, has said, I'm sure there's a lot to be learning, and unpacking in this 5 part documentary. I don't know whether every every part would highlight by perhaps a 10-year period of his life, creative life, because he spent over 5 decades in the film industry making films, and he's one of the most celebrated and one of the most nominated, filmmaker in the world with regards to Academy and more. I mean, he's not the most nominated and perhaps won a lot. I think that title goes to John Ford, if I'm not mistaken. But he's one of the most nominated in terms of whether uh, Best Picture, writing, and a whole lot. So it is quite interesting, and I'm excited that they released this particular documentary, or they're about to release it come October 17th on the Apple TV Plus platforms, and I think it to be exciting. And knowing what Apple have been able to do over the years, particularly with their originals in terms of their documentaries, it has always been, a hit. They are one of the studios with the most nominated and the most won originals, whether series, whether film, whether documentaries. They have one of the highest nominated and highest were number of films that have won, not just the I mean, in terms of Oscars, Emmys, you name it, whichever academy, whichever award award scheme it is, they've won a lot and they've been nominated a lot. So looking at their track record and looking at the pedigree of Rebecca Miller, it is of no doubt that this documentary will be one of the best that Apple has, and perhaps would win an Emmy when it finally comes around. So I, for one, am excited and I want to watch this. I want to learn from the legendary filmmaker himself. And I don't know about you. Let me know what you think concerning this documentary that is going to be released about about Martin Scorsese. What do you expect in this documentary? And are you shocked to hear about the decision he wanted to take with regards to him wanting to keep the scene in and will not budge? Let me know that. Let me know what you think in the comment section, below. So that is quite an interesting story beginning this particular episode and moving on from the story of an Academy Award winner. We move into a second story, and in this story, Saudi Arabia has already kickstarted their campaign for next year's Oscars. And one of the things they are looking at is opening the entries wide to the entire public of provided you're a Saudi national or you're a Saudi national, you are welcome to submit your film for to be selected or into the international foreign language film category. And this has been published in the Arab News article. It reads that Saudi Film Commission invites nominations for maiden Oscar entry. And it says that Riyadh, the Saudi Film Commission has invited local filmmakers to submit their work for a historic first Oscar entry. For the first time, the commission has opened submissions for filmmakers to put forward their works for consideration as Saudi Arabia's official entry to the 98th Academy Awards in the International Feature Film Award category. The process was previously handled through the direct nominations by the commission based on its own criteria. On Sunday, the commission announced the rules and selection process for the kingdom's submission. They include details on the formation of the nomination committee, film eligibility requirements, and submission procedures in a move aimed at enhancing the global presence of Saudi cinema and supporting the kingdom's position in the international film industry. The first theatrical release of the film in Saudi Arabia must have taken place between October 1st, 2024 to September 30th, 2025, with a qualifying commercial run of at least a week. The newly formed nomination committee comprises independent film professionals and experts operating under Academy rules to ensure transparency, fairness, and impartiality in the evaluation process. The committee will review and discuss eligible applications before voting, notably as part of its effort to empower Saudi filmmakers and connect them with the global film landscape. A film commission is participating in the Locarno Film Festival to cement its presence in European and global markets. The Locarno Film Festival, taking place from August 6th to 16th, 2025, is an annual international film festival held in Locarno, Switzerland, since 1946, and is known for showcasing experimental and art house cinema as well as debut works by emerging directors. So yeah, Saudi Arabia is not joking with regards to their determination to ensure that a film of theirs is placed within or it is nominated into, at least nominated into the International Feature Award category. And listen, it has become a big deal nowadays, knowing that one of the ways you can also help your own film industry is to be, to have your films, from your country nominated into any of these prestigious, film awards all over the world. And Saudi Arabia have been very, they are very successful in most areas in terms of oil generation and stuff. And I can foresee why they want to push heavily, because one of the ways you can easily export your culture for people to, to even boost tourism is through filmmaking. And a lot of the countries who have, very thriving film industries have been able to positively impact their GDPs with regards to their films, attracting a lot of foreign dollars through tourism, and sometimes even the very same industry, through the films that they've been making. And that has really helped. One of the ways that America became such endeared to the world is as a result of their films, from what they've been able to do over the years. And so far, it looks like almost every other nation is following suit. So to have Saudi Arabia also be in the pursuit of getting this done for their country is admirable, because then I'm sure they have very powerful filmmakers who have made films, and opening this to the public would allow diversity of ideas and films to be presented. Obviously, they're going to select a few and then present, finally vote on the number and come up with one. Unfortunately, it's only one film per country that can be presented into the Oscar possible, selection race. So it is quite interesting, and not just them, but Czech, the Czech Republic have actually nominated one film already to be presented into the foreign the category, but this one is for the documentary section, and it's "I'm Not Everything I Want to Be," and that is the film, the documentary that is going to be presented. And I learned this film has to do with it profiles a photographer, Libuse Jakova, an uncompromising artist who chronicled Prague's underground scene in the 1980s before fleeing to West Berlin. So, most countries are gearing up for this, because the earlier you get your house in order and make sure the best film is selected, the better for you. And it is indeed exciting to see that these countries are pushing to get these done for themselves. And it is indeed exciting. And listen, the foreign language, I mean, the foreign, let me just get the name right. The foreign, international foreign, um, just a bit. The international, this particular category, the international foreign, selection, I would actually say you can even, it's almost similar in spirit or scope with regards to the best picture, award category. Why do I say that? Because this film will not be selected necessarily for its best script or best directing whatsoever. It is actually being considered as a whole, the total production as a whole. So indeed, a lot goes into making sure that the best, is selected for that international category. And it would definitely point to the fact that it has to be good in all areas for it to be selected, because you are coming against not just a continent, but several continents with several countries being presented their own, and they would have to even be selected first on and for by your own country, then nominated to be part of the number of films that will be there. I don't know whether it's 512. So it is indeed a keenly, highly contested category that you cannot take for granted. If you want to put your films in this category, it has to be the very best, or it wouldn't be presented at all. And at least, not just that, but at least there are also other categories that I'm sure filmmakers from outside America, the North American countries, can enter into. There is also animation, there is also documentary shorts and documentaries. So there are also other categories that foreign countries can present themselves in. But it is really a tough uphill battle to go for. And I'm not surprised that Saudi means so much business. They mean business, and it is exciting that they started this early to make sure that at least they can select the best to present. So I don't know. I'm excited about this because the Oscars is one of the events I always look forward to, as a cinephile, as a filmmaker, something that I always look forward to to get to see which films are performing so well or which films are likely to win the overall. So it is something I always get excited about, and seeing that some countries are already up and doing, getting their films ready for the Oscar race, it's exciting for me. So let me know what you think in particular with this story. What do you think with regards to the early opening of the acceptance for, calling in for entries? What do you think about this? Do you think is the right way to go? And if you've ever watched any of the Saudi films, I'll be honest, I have not watched any yet. But if you have ever watched any of the Saudi films and you think any of them can possibly be nominated or should be nominated, let me know your thoughts on that and leave the title in the comment section below. So moving on from the Oscars, I came to actually found an article that is quite exciting. And this was way before even the Oscars was established in the early 20th century. And this part of this story feels even stranger than fiction. It feels like a feature film itself, and it's quite exciting. It's quite a lengthy article, so I'm not sure I'll be able to read it all, but it is worth talking about. So let me just bring it up briefly and see how much ground I can cover with regards to the article. And it says that how an American movie mogul built his own Hollywood in South Africa. And this is written by Mark Levin. And it's actually captured in a book titled The Hollywood on the Veiled. Hollywood on the Veil, from the author of the best-selling Daisy de Melker. So I'll try and read as much as I can. Over the past 2 decades, the project to convert the old Natal Command military base into a film studio has been dogged by controversy, litigation, delays, and yet more litigation. In a new book, Hollywood on the Veiled, by I think Ted Botha, resurrects the movie career of Isidore William Schlesinger, a man who took few prisoners and went to achieve remarkable success in less than half the time that the Natal Command saga has dragged on. So I think that's Isidore Schlesinger. Yeah, that's him in the picture there. Yeah. So I read on. Born in 1871 in the tough East Side district of New York, Isidore William Schlesinger, known as IW to his close associates, decided to seek his fortune in South Africa, sailing steerage class. He arrived in Cape Town in 1894 before making his way to Johannesburg. Entering the insurance industry, he traveled the length and breadth of the country, the landscape, and a profound escape on him, as did the people he met, particularly the Afrikaners, who told him their stories over farm dinner tables. He even tried to sell an insurance policy to President Paul Kruger. He declined. IW was so successful that he founded his own insurance company before going into real estate, establishing new suburbs in Port Elizabeth and Johannesburg. Yeah, in 1906, he paid £60,000 for some acres of veld well outside the town, naming it Killarney. It was where he would build a film studio in much the same way as the first American moguls built their studios in the citrus groves outside Los Angeles in what became Hollywood. IW's entry into the movie business began in May 1913 when he saw another opportunity: theaters. With no experience in entertainment, he bought the Empire Palace in Johannesburg at an auction, following it up with further purchases of distressed theaters. So there in your picture is one of the purchases he made, yeah, as a theater. So by February 1915, he owned 40 across the country with plans to build more. He formed a company, African Theatres, but needing movies to screen in them, he launched a certain company, African Films, with a Springbok at its logo. In the very month that IW bought the empire, the 1913 mine workers' strike began. Short newsreels of daily events were popular with audiences, but without cameramen, IW immediately bought out a small outfit and began a third company, African Mirror. As the strike grew bloodier, so IW's team was there to record the footage. By July, a series of short films were ready to be screened. These morphed into The Great Strike, which unintentionally became his first film. Initially banned out of fears that it would incite further violence, it drew capacity crowds as soon as the ban was lifted. It was declared a triumph of the bioscope art. So the first foray into the world of film by IW was indicative of the man himself, a workaholic whose day began at 5 a.m. He was a visionary who relentlessly pursued opportunities, seeking even buying talent to make his vision a reality. The Randali Mail wrote that he was never content, content to stand still, always trying to perfect every business. He might have been short in stature, but he dominated everyone and stood no nonsense. Although the tough New York upbringing never left him, he was always impeccably dressed, wearing a Savile Row suit, a bowler hat, and the smartest shoes. There was never a hair out of place. IW's deep love of South Africa was behind some of his most groundbreaking films. The seductive landscape seemed to have beckoned him as with a wand of witchery. The wide horizons and great open spaces convinced him of the possibility for cinema art. And this is where it gets interesting. This is what I was talking about. Even the behind the scenes was even more interesting. I haven't watched this film, but if it exists, I will really seek it out to watch. But this is what he has to say that winning a continent told the story of the Great Trek and the Battle of Blood River. Its Afrikaans title was the Voortrekkers. The scale to make this film in 1916 was staggering. Unusually for the time, it was filmed on location with a cast of 6,000, all of whom required costumes. In addition, 12,000 guys, and I'm sure I've got it wrong, but and 55,000 5,500 Nobikar Kiris, pardon me, were made for the Zulu actors, while the old-time muzzle loaders were tracked down for the Boers. So that's, I think, one of the actors dressed as a Zulu warrior. I hope I got it right. Yeah. So it's still showing Sishawo readying for battle in symbol of sacrifice, 1918. So he said the most difficult part was filming the Battle of Blood River on a local mining property. A dam was constructed which could feed into a waterway to create a river. IW persuaded the Rand Water Board to sell him 2 million gallons, about 20% of Johannesburg's daily water consumption. During filming, the director and his crew lost control, and the battle between the Voortrekkers and Zulus turned real. One man died and 135 injured. Meanwhile, conservative Afrikaners had protested that filming was taking place on the Sabbath. The final scene was filmed at Killarney on December 11th. The following day, the only copy of the film was taken to Pretoria, where it was screened for Prime Minister Louis Botha and senior ministers. Botha confessed that at times he was moved to tears. Its first public screening was 4 days later on December 16th, then known as Dingaan Days. The film movie, the biggest yet made in the British Empire, was declared the greatest ever produced in the history of cinema. Various authors have noted the similarities between Winning a Continent and the later Hollywood Trek movies, particularly the Covered Wagon, which was a huge box office success. It did not, however, win the Academy Award for Best Picture as stated by Ted Botha. The first Oscar ceremony was in 1929, some years after the covered wagon. Yeah, so there's a lot in this article, but my fascination is with the fact that it looks like I.W. Schlesinger seemed to be way ahead of its time in the sense that, listen, the description of the set, the behind the scenes was unthinkable. Way before his time, he had about almost 20,000 extras in his production, and all of them was costumed. And it's fascinating because, I mean, but obviously, I'm sure the a lot of the craft of filmmaking itself was perhaps at its infantile stage. So maybe to him and to the new area he found himself in South Africa, and therefore they lost control because on sets of this nature you need a lot of PAs to ensure that a lot of controls were made. I mean, I wasn't there. I'm sure he had all those things in place, but for some reason, the fight sequence ended up being real, and that is scary. To the extent that 135 people were injured and one person lost his life. So, I mean, the vision of Schlesinger, I mean, was is massive. It 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 speaks of how passionate he was about building a film industry, that is almost a replica or even bigger than what Hollywood thought of. And that is amazing. No wonder South Africa as an African country has, if not, I'm sure it has the best film industry in Africa. I mean, if not the best, it is perhaps the very best, one of the very best in on the continent, and they have one of the most organized film industry. Yes, every industry in Africa has its own pockets of problem, but with regards to how it's organized and structured, I think it's one of the best in Africa. Maybe owing to what I.W. Schlesinger was able to achieve. Honestly, this story is new to me. It was when I was coming to do this production that I discovered it, and I'm sure the book would give more insight as to who the man behind the VLED, the Hollywood in Africa was, and give more insight. It's however unfortunate that out of the 40 films that he made, all of them are lost except for I think four or five, and that is really really sad because regardless of wherever he came from, the fact that he came onto this continent and shot all these films is something worth watching. you know and it's unfortunate that all these films have been lost to uh, I mean it's been lost, but what I can say is that I think he dreamt of a vision of Hollywood in Africa. And unfortunately, even the sad part of the story is that when you read the article down further, when his son took over, his son sold off all the properties to live a different life altogether. And his legacy, in a way, was sort of lost in terms of, you know, if I may say, being perhaps the godfather of Hollywood style filmmaking or even Hollywood establishments in Africa was gone. And it's sad that that had to happen. But I don't know the man, I don't know much about him, but for his exploits in trying to establish Hollywood in Africa in the early, 20th century is amazing. To have about 18 to 20,000 extras in a film around the 1920s is mind blowing. And he was indeed a real movie mogul in the likes of the Warner Brothers, where he was buying theaters because he understood that to have a cinema, to have a production house, it is not enough. You need to own the cinema. So he had to go ahead to buy cinemas so that his films can be screened in the cinemas. And not only that, he also thought of creating, he did create a company or bought out a company so that he could have cameramen and crew to shoot his film. So I.W. Schlesinger, I don't know, the brain that this man is amazing, and I'm hoping this book, which Ted Botha has written, would perhaps share more light on it, and maybe someday a film about this filmmaker can be made so that we can, have have it realized on a silver screen for a lot of Africans to learn from. Yes, because it I think is there are a lot of histories, about filmmaking in Africa that we have no idea about, and it's been lost to time. And I'm hoping that this will not. And thankfully, Ted Botha has written this book, and I'm sure to give us much insight as to who he was, some of the things he did achieve, and even though a lot of his films have been lost, perhaps if he has titles on them, maybe we could hazard a guess as to the stories of those titles. So yeah, it's exciting to know that once upon a time in Africa, there was a thriving film industry as big or even perhaps bigger than Hollywood in South Africa. And it's unfortunate that it doesn't exist in the form and vision that he had in mind. Perhaps if everything had gone on well, South Africa would have been the hub of our own Hollywood in Africa, where all the other film industries in the countries all over will be influenced so positively by what I.W. Schlesinger did. So honestly, I don't know whether the book is on sale for now, but I should think so. But I think we should all get copies. If you're a cinephile and you're an African and you want to know more about how Africa once had a bigger and thriving film industry in the scope of Hollywood, maybe we should all get this book and read it. So it is indeed exciting where Africa could have gone if this had been really, really successful. The I.W. Schlesinger. Let me see if I can get the name of the book itself. I think the book is called, yeah, Hollywood on the Veil. Let me bring it up again. I think that would help for those who are watching and would want to know. So yeah, Hollywood on the Veil. Yeah, so it is indeed. I mean, history is quite fascinating when you get to discover that there are possibilities that never realized. So yeah, that is the book from the author of the best-selling Daisy the Melka, Hollywood on the Veil, which chronicles the life and works of I.W. Schlesinger. I think that's a picture of him in your shot. So indeed, it's exciting. I mean, I have learned a thing today myself. I didn't know this existed, but with all this, I'm really, really happy that I've come to chance upon a piece of history that would have been lost because all his films, out of 40 films, only five were left. 40 have been lost to history, to time. We don't even know where it is, and it's unfortunate. Anyway, so this sums up my story. Let me know your thoughts on this. If you happen to watch this and you know a little bit about his story, I would like you to leave anything at all that you know about the titles of his films in the comment section below, and let's have more dialogue on what could have been, Africa's own well-functioning Hollywood on a scale that perhaps could have easily rivaled that of Hollywood in LA. So it's unfortunate that it had to feel this way. Anyway, so all too soon, I've come to an end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining me, and I really appreciate you. And I'll come your way again tomorrow with another exciting episode of the Film Mandate. My name is Papa Otu, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.